I'm gonna hit you with a statement that I think should not be controversial. At max level, you should know how to do your rotation. Does that make me toxic? I don't know, but I don't blame you either way. I know you're doing your best. You wanna know who I do blame? Square Enix.
Nightmare.
No. Wait.
There's a reason your expert roulette varies so much in length. You could have a nice 11 to 12 minute run, or you could be stuck there for 25. There's also a reason why your extreme trial somehow manages to hit Enrage, despite you not having many deaths. It's not because you missed that one positional, and it's also not because the tank got distracted by the Catgirl's glamour.
Wow!
It's because Final Fantasy XIV does not teach you how to play it correctly. A little while back, I made a video talking about the low-level experience and why I had an issue with the fact that a lot of jobs don't unlock their AoE skills early, and I felt that some jobs gained a feature-complete rotation way too late in the leveling process. And in that video, I said I'd talk about how FF14's teaching tools need work badly. It's been a few weeks. My complaining quota needs fulfilling once more. So today is that day, let's talk about it. So what do you need to be a solid FF14 player? Obviously you need a good understanding of your job, you need a good understanding of the game's fundamentals, you need knowledge of recurring mechanics, and you need the capability to know your role in a team as well as what your teammates offer. There's obviously more, but I feel like that's kind of the baseline, right? If we simplify it down even further, we can expect players to learn their 3 Ps by endgame. Push buttons, party support, play the mechanics, doofus. I think that's reasonable. There will always be different capabilities and skill levels, that's completely normal. As well as that, there will always be differing aspirations and situations which will lead to different people wanting to put different levels of effort into learning. That's okay. It's totally okay to be a more casual player and be a little more in progress. It's respectable. But what I think isn't really respectable is not bothering to learn your rotation or even your role responsibilities, not attempting to use mitigation, and not at least trying to learn from your mistakes when it comes to mechanical execution. And how can you be sure players are at least at that baseline? By teaching them. FF14 should have tools and experiences built into the game that explicitly and with purpose teaches them those things. What does it have right now? The Hall of the Novice. Today, we are going to look at the Hall of the Novice, see what it does right and wrong, and theorycraft how we could bring it up to today's standards. So what does the Hall of the Novice currently offer? It was first introduced in patch 3.2, which was almost halfway through the game's first expansion, Heavensward. You unlock it right before Sastasha, and it is recommended but not required to enter. When you complete it, you get a neat little armor set that is equivalent to the gear that drops from the first set of dungeons in the game, and honestly it looks pretty nice for early game gear as well. And you also get a brand new ring to provide tasty stats and a lovely XP buff. The rewards are simple, but I think pretty worth it, and it's something I recommend new players to do for that alone. But what does it teach you? So firstly, interestingly, there currently is a different version of the Hall of the Novice depending on which role you enter on. I didn't know that until quite recently, and each version of the Hall of the Novice has different activities and even a different number of training sessions based on your role. For example, Tank has the most with 8 unique training exercises, DPS has 7, and Healer has by far the least with 5. If that doesn't tell you that Healer propaganda has been convincing you of a lie and that it's actually the easiest role, I don't know what will. They all start off by having you dodge simple AoEs, and a final test that quote-unquote aggregates all the knowledge you've gained so far, but from there they somewhat diverge. Healer has you healing an ally, healing multiple allies, and dodging AoEs that aren't aimed at you, as well as not hitting your allies with AoEs targeted at you, which, as an aside, has to be divine intervention by Yoshi P to get people to leave his bloody ley lines alone. DPS has numerous exercises teaching you that you have to kill enemies, dodging AoEs, targeting a tank, and for some reason, DPS and only DPS are taught to interact with objects on the battlefield, so next time the Bard refuses to grab those orbs in the Cerberus encounter, we all know to spam report on that one guy. Tanks learn to do their basic combo, to pull mobs, to use their AoE skills, and to pull via shield lob or an equivalent skill. Basically, all of their lessons tie into tanking and holding aggro, but the things they actually have you do in order to get there definitely comes together as the most complete beginner class of the 3. What I think is interesting is that I doubt most people even know that the Hall of the Novice is different per role. What's even more interesting is that I actually feel like For the point in the game where you're at when you unlock it, aka level 15, this is actually a really solid set of tutorials to make new players duty ready on their role. I'm a fan. It's good, great work. No sarcasm, no nothing. But the game does not end at level 15. As players get further into their Final Fantasy XIV experience, their skill and capability, and more importantly their knowledge base, are going to naturally lag behind what's expected of them. And after finishing Hall of the Novice, they're thrown on the street and expected to fend for themselves forever. The options are to find guides or to delve into Discord servers, spend an unhealthy number of hours figuring out rotations yourself, or just kind of suck at the game. And I don't think that's right. We need additional halls for more experienced players, so let's assume there's a Hall of the Expert that you get later into your leveling process. The end of the current free trial, level 70, that seems like a decent potential spot, right? You could also make a good argument for level 50 or level 60 as well. Now this is the part of the video where we have delusions of grandeur for a moment. Let's pretend Yoshi P hired us, me and you, to design new training tools in order to give new players a more thorough and realistic entry to endgame. We get it right and it's good, we get a pay rise. We get it wrong, we get rocketed into space on the back of an Amaro and explode or something like that. Time to get cooking. First up, I think the concept of having split halls per role is an absolutely great idea. Good job Square Enix, but it doesn't go far enough. There should be a Hall of the Expert for your role. And by role I don't just mean DPS, tank or healer, I mean having at least 1 or 2 lessons that are unique within each role within that category. So shield healers will get 1 or 2 unique tutorials to regen healers, range to melee and so on. But going further than that, every individual job will also get 2 unique lectures specific to them. Let's quickly cover those first because they're really simple. You'll have one floor that has the sole intention of teaching you the correct basic rotation for your job and the priorities if it's a proc or priority system based job, both single target and AoE. And by basic rotation I don't just mean 1, 2, 3. I mean it teaches you the core of everything. Let's take Bard as an example and assume the hall is at level 70. It would teach you the 3 songs and to cycle them. It would teach you the dots and using Iron Jaws to refresh them. It would teach you how to use your Effulgent Arrow procs as a priority and to use your off globals and personal buffs. A simple example of how they could showcase this is as follows. It gives you 2 stacks of Pitch Perfect and tells you that this enemy will only take damage from a 3 stack of Pitch Perfect. And it has you use your Imperial Arrow to proc the 3rd stack, allowing you to kill the enemy, so you learn the way that Imperial Arrow procs the song buffs. This tutorial would take the longest of all, and would lead into the second job-specific trial, a DPS check with simple mechanics. Tanks will have a DPS check which is hard, requiring you to press cooldowns. Healers will have the same, but with an NPC tank that they have to heal during the DPS check, and the DPS will have the enemy moving around occasionally, dropping AoEs to dodge. These checks wouldn't be tight by any means, but they would expect the player to have learned the core rotation of their job in order to pass. Just the core 1, 2, 3 would not be enough, you'd need to incorporate off globals and gauge dumping as well. But this is just the start. The tutorials that will remain uniform across the board on every role would be 1 or a couple of halls that would introduce players to all uniform markers and telegraphs. This would include stacks, spreads, prey, debuffs on party lists that need cleansing, pyretic and freeze could work well for this, for example, for people that can't cleanse, tank buster indicators, multi-stack markers, AoEs, moving AoEs like exaflares, rotating AoEs, light party stacks, knockbacks, pull-ins. Every standardized mechanic that you've seen happen in the game regularly should be featured, especially those that have their own markers associated. Standardized markers that have been propagated across the game are a language, and it's criminal that there is no dictionary provided to new players by the game itself. The only way to learn the language is by accruing random pieces of information piecemeal across dozens and dozens of different fights. Introducing these mechanics in lessons and making them easy to digest would allow newer Warriors of Light to internalize them quickly. There should also be enemy cast bars covered, as well as cast bars originating from multiple enemies, requiring you to check the enemy list and avoid a simple variety of untelegraphed AoEs by paying attention to that list. This is something that becomes essential later in the game. Watching cast bars is not an optional skill to develop, so it's good to give them a trial by fire as soon as possible. Tanks would learn tank swapping with an NPC co-tank, boss movement and boss facing. While the need for these have diminished in Endwalker, they're still very prevalent in certain content. they would learn to tank multiple enemies, and that it is a requirement for them to grab aggro quickly or the NPCs will die. You could give them a timer to pick up enemies before the DPS NPCs would start attacking. And yes, the subtext between the lines that I'm saying here is that tanks should learn that it is their responsibility to pick up stray mobs that are non-tank grabs, rather than standing there like a lemming and passive-aggressively spamming party chat. They could also get a lesson in tanking larger mob packs. The enemies have various size hitboxes and thus will be a little messy to group up, but they need to be moved away from squishier party members regardless. Mitigation is the other important test. Not just pop a cooldown to survive a hit, though that would be included. Instead, an extended test of auto attacks and tank busters cycled that tests not only the ability to pop cooldowns, but also has you space your cooldowns out over an extended period of time and pairing them essentially. The tutorial could give recommendations on good pairings even. It could teach you to use your 25 second with Rampart and then use your 25 second again with your 120, could do things like that. Seeing as this is essential for even good dungeon gameplay, it's another must learn for tanks. Healers get some special education too. They're going to learn a few things and get it aired out and out in the open right away. They're going to learn to heal and DPS at the same time. Being able to use your off-global healing abilities in between filler damaging spells is something that Savage necessitates. Unless you plan on doing every piece of content when it's outdated, your damage participation is expected and in some pieces of content required. That's how the game is tuned, so it's something to teach healers clearly and properly. It's also important that healers don't just learn that you need to heal the tanks occasionally and also the raid. This is covered in the Hall of the Novice and doesn't really give you a taste of the situations healers may find difficult. Instead, I'd love a lesson that puts you in 3 unique scenarios reminiscent of 3 endgame encounters and asking them to get the NPC party through it, alive, in one piece. Firstly, singular raid hits with gaps between them that require mitigation to survive. This is especially important for shield healers to teach them to make use of their tools and not rely solely upon their AoE shield to mitigate. Secondly, multi-hit raid wides over an extended period of time, much like the enrage of Neo X-Death in 04S. Thirdly, single target spot healing on random targets, such as those that may be the recipients of prey in endgame content. Guardian applying dots to DPS springs to mind here for this. Healers need to be able to heal, mitigate, and deal damage, and that healing can take many forms. I think it's really important to give new players the opportunity to practice them comfortably and safely, so they don't get flamed because they're not ready in Duty Finder. And unlike the FF14 devs in half of the encounters in the game, I'm not going to let the DPS shirk all responsibility. They're going to have some unique tutorials as well. Melee would learn positionals, engaging and disengaging targets via gap closers, and be placed in scenarios where they need to pull away from an enemy to dodge an AoE, then go back in and maintain their rotation for a short DPS check. Casters would learn to damage on the move, which I think would be slightly harder on some jobs than others. Ranged DPS would learn to juggle mechanics in their rotation, as they will likely end up as primary baiters for mechanics in extreme and higher trials. You know how ranged have to bait big AoEs in mechanics like Pantocrator? Something like that would work perfectly. All DPS would learn to use their mitigation options as well, because it is most certainly in their job description to incorporate those. All DPS would have map awareness tests, like a big boss they have to fight, but occasionally small ads pop up and begin casting an enrage, a little bit like the butterflies in Ravana, requiring DPS to notice them and kill them quickly. I don't think this haul needs to cover absolutely everything, and I also think it should only be really pushed, or maybe even mandatory, if players want to enter Extreme Trial, Savage, or Ultimate content. The Hall of the Expert would be intending to check that players are able to understand their basic rotation, to know most of the core telegraphs in the game, and to know the responsibilities of their role, and to ensure they're able to execute them at a base endgame level. And honestly, I think that's pretty reasonable. You think I get fired? You think you get fired? Are we okay? Or are we going into orbit with the Amaro? My question for you today is this. If you could design one single tutorial to go in the Hall of the Novice, or in a theoretical Hall of the Expert, what would it be? Do you think the game needs additional teaching tools, or is the current status quo fine? I'd love to open up a bit of a discussion about this, because I personally believe it's something that a lot of players would love to see change in the future, and I'm definitely one of them. Your Party Finders and Duty Finder runs will thank you, Square Enix, I guarantee it. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a fantastic rest of your day. I'll see you next week with another video.